Hey everybody, Mike Musto here, and we're back for another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue. Now, as you could tell, if you're watching this on YouTube, I am solo for a little while until Mr. Stoner joins back in. He had to step out for a little bit, but he'll be back. So on this episode, we've got a pretty cool guest, a gentleman by the name of Brock Yates Jr. Now, some of you might know the name Brock Yates, and you should, because he was literally one of the best and most well-respected automotive journalists in, history. Wrote for Car and Driver for a million years. Basically invented what is the Cannonball Run, or what was previously known as the Cannonball Run, and is now morphed into the One Lap of America. Well, Brock Yates Jr. is his son, another amazingly respected automotive journalist. He is the coordinator and the purveyor of the One Lap of America, an event that is probably one of my favorite automotive events. Done it 5 times. If you haven't done it, you like to drive on racetracks, there is only one event, and that's the One Lap of America. But before we get into that, and before we start talking to Mr. Brock, we pulled a car from our classifieds, as we always do in every episode. And the car reflects either the guest or, something that he can resonate to, or something that they do that would resonate. So in this case, we pulled a pretty slick one. So the car in question is a 1972 Di Tommaso Pantera. But the cool part about this one is it's got a race history. Now, for those who don't know about the Di Tommaso, this is kind of that hybrid, right? We've got Italian styling combined with a big honking American V8. In this case, the car has been pimped out with a 383 stroker motor that was, started off from the 351 that was originally put on it. It's got a full cage, it's got suspension and everything else. But we chose it because it's like, I would race this in the One Lap of America. And just to kind of preface that event, it's 8 days, 8 racetracks, anywhere between 2,700 and 4,000 miles in a week. You eat, sleep, drink in your car. And I got news. Like, I would run this thing. This is pretty badass. And obviously, we pulled it from our Hemmings Classifieds, of which we have 25 to 30,000 cars at any given time. Obviously, look at the classifieds for anything automotive related or motorcycle related. We have a lot of those too. And then also check out our auction, because we've got some amazing vehicles on there too. In a few seconds, we're going to come back. We're going to talk to Mr. Brock Yates Jr. And also Mr. Stoner will be back by then. He's always fun because, the man's got the hair. So people, we'll talk to you a little bit. Be back in a few. I wanted to point something out to you that is, I know, a little bit of annoying. And you can see in this episode, we've had a couple of audio hiccups, but they're not super terrible. So I need you to stick with the episode, listen, because it's really actually pretty damn good. And we're addressing everything. We're getting everything fixed up for future episodes, but don't tune out, because this is too good not to listen to. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. As mentioned, on this week, we have Mr. Brock Yates Jr. God, superb automotive journalist, founder or extender or organizer of the One Lap of America. Brock, I don't know how you would categorize that. What would you say your role is? The purveyor of One Lap?
I don't know. I considered myself the coordinator. Because really, I cats around the country more than I do anything else.
Well, for those out there that might not know, One Lap of America is by far my favorite automotive event. Well, it's by far my favorite automotive event. I've done it probably, I think, around 5 times or so in a host of different automobiles, running around the country with a bunch of amazing people that I've kind of turned into an extended family. But for those that don't know, Brock, give us kind of a rundown of what the One Lap of America is.
One Lap is an 8-day performance rally where we set out from South Bend at the Fair Rack and drive to 8 geographically distant racetracks in a week and compete on each one and return to South Bend after traversing 3,500, 4,000 miles and some of America's racetracks.
It just sounds so easy when he says it, doesn't it?
It sounds like, but Brock makes everything sound easy. That's the whole part. Brock just goes, "Nah, it's totally fine." Hey, how many miles?
You see people that think 700 miles is good trundle.
That's a bathroom break, right? Exactly. That's 700 miles, yeah.
Actually, as long as you're not driving a Prius or an Insider or something like that, where the car outlasts your ladder, you're fine.
Right. Well, yeah, that.
Well, I think it's funny because for those people who haven't done One Lap, it kind of preps you I remember the first time that I did it, and we found out we were leaving a racetrack at 3:00 in the afternoon, and we had, I think, 500 miles to go. And I was like, 500 miles? It's 3:00 in the afternoon. We're not going to get there to whatever. And, but once you do that, once you just repetitively do that, it is so commonplace. So now that when somebody says, well, I live 700 miles away, I go, I'll just drive it.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
not a big deal.
Anything under 500 miles is faster to drive than fly anyway. So,
That's true. That's true. When you take it all into consideration.
Yeah. Door, rent a car, get your luggage, all that other stuff. Yeah, it's much faster to drive.
Right.
Absolutely. So, Brock, give us the origins of the one lap, how it started, how it's morphed over the years, and then we can talk about what didn't happen in 2020. So,
a lot of my father wrote for Car Driver magazine for 40 years, and at some point in his strange, illustrious, bizarre career, he invented what was called the Cannonball Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash. It listed race run from New York City to Redondo, California, and speeds that never exceeded, according to Ken Gurney, 175 miles an hour. And it was outlaw. It was well received. It was badly received. Well, some people went to jail, but it was run all through the 70s. And in the early 80s, my father noticed that it was getting awfully serious, and all the whole reputation and the myth of Cannonball was at risk with if somebody drove into a busload of nuts. So he decided to put a bullet in it, his word, and that he thought about it for a while, and he had some other ideas. And one of them was, I remember him having a map on the kitchen table that said the 10 Grand Lap of America, which I think originally envisioned a race circumnavigating the periphery of the country.
Okay.
And in 1984, he put together the first one lap of America, which was pretty much the same thing. We drove from the Lock, Stock, Barrel in Connecticut, Darien, Connecticut, Boston to Seattle to Miami, or to San Diego to Miami, and back to Darien in a week.
Okay.
And it was a very bizarre, very circus type run, but we had a lot of fun, and that was the first one lap. And over time, he instituted and incorporated some competitions as much as the SCCA, the sanctioning body, would allow, which were like gymkhana and regularity runs, TSD reps, and relatively boring stuff. And in the early 90s, they told the SEC that, we're going to do a slalom around Hallett Racetrack in Oklahoma. And somehow all of the cones were missing on the racetrack when we showed up, and we had a speed run, and nobody died. And that kind of gave birth to the new era of lap. And now all of our racing on closed course tracks, no speed limits, no cones, and as you can go in a trial format. So we went to about 85 or 90 racetracks around the country, and we're going to do more as we keep building, we keep extending our reach. So it's been it's been an opportunity to not only meet great people, but see the country and see just fabulous racetrack.
And Brock, in all those years, have there ever been a nefarious encounter with a busload of nuts? Has it happened?
Describe nefarious.
That's a fair question.
No, thankfully we've avoided the catastrophe that would ensue and the liability and the anger. No, our incidents have been few. They've been thankfully injuries, and almost all ones on the highways are not our fault. Usually people just do stupid stuff and their cars happen to be there. We had offs and stupid things on racetracks too. Those don't really count as, because that's it's competition.
Controlled, yeah. Well, so at what point, after Brock had converted the, kind of put the bullet in the cannonball, like you said, went into one lap of America, at what point did it go from that kind of, I guess, partyish atmosphere where the Cannonball was, or more of a kind of a high-speed open road race, to the competition, and when did people really start taking that competition aspect seriously? At like one lap, 2, 3, 4, or was it right out of the gate that people were like, "Oh no, I want to win this event"?
In the late '80s, John Buffum, the great rally champion, was paid by various car companies to win it, and we had from some very sophisticated TSD sections. We had autocrosses. We had some interesting things to do with automobiles that required skill, speed, in a car. So early on, and there's a lot of manufacturer interest, a lot of sponsor interest, and a lot of very good driver interests. Most of the rally champions of the period, Carl Chevalier and Buffum, and that was fine and good, except nothing more of a pain in the ass than a TSD rally with TSD ralliers. They're lovely people, but they're worse than lawyers on track. I mean, when something goes wrong, it's not their fault. So we started moving away from on the road competitions and moved to the tracks. And there's always been an element of one lap that's been, this is great, this is fun, the people are wonderful, I'm going to keep coming back until I can't. And then there's always a contingent of people that are taking it seriously. Luckily, the people that take it seriously are still having fun. So we don't have the contingent of people that are so serious they're complete assholes. I mean, anybody that takes it so seriously, they just come back, and it's fine with me. And so even at the top levels of the game, everybody's sportsmanlike, supportive, helpful. Got a 97. Tom Reese, the head instructor for track time, ended up being towed by the guy that was winning the event, 150 miles in Vegas, and that guy, Tom Reese, ended up winning the event. And so he got the sportsmanship award, even though he had been winning at that point. But it was, that's the type of camaraderie that's always pervasive through the event.
Well, the other thing I remember, in the times that I've done one lap, the thing that always strikes me most is obviously the dichotomy of cars. The scope of different vehicles is mind-blowing when you show up to South Bend in that Pyre Rack parking lot, right? You've got everything from muscle cars to cars from the 50s to full-on tube chassis race. I mean, it was a couple of years ago, some guy ran like a 79 Country Squire station wagon. Like, oh, see, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, you have that was whew.
It's an idea, though. It's an idea.
But when he goes around corners, you could check the entirety of the subframe.
Yeah, it's like on door handle to door handle around every turn. But it's amazing because what you end up seeing is people, and you have, make no mistake, there are pro drivers that do this event, right? So I think you have these people that sometimes come out and they get so serious about it, and then their thing is, I'm going to win this event my first time. And what you just kind of look, anybody who's done one lap looks at that person and go, no, you're not. That's not happening. That's a very rare thing. Has that ever happened, actually?
We've had people that showed up and the event on their first time out. Usually it's due to a quirk of fate. And all the runners would break, and somebody that kind of was in the hunt the entire time all of a sudden was gifted the win, which is fine. You have to survive the win, where there's no taking away the fact that he won the event.
Right.
And but usually, like you say, you have to come fully prepared, understand what's going on. Winkler, I think, was the head driver for Dodge, and brought a, oh my God, Viper one year, and it was the fastest car out there by a ton. But he had never driven a wet skid pad before.
Really?
And so we have for several competitions, and we drive oval, we drive autocrosses, but at the tire rack we do wet skid pad to start with when the tires are fresh. And he takes this giant car with way too much tire out around and scores 71st overall in the event. And he was way behind the first place car and never catch him, even though he won virtually every event thereafter.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what, that's the other part. I mean, we've driven everything from, my God, road courses to drag strips to we've been on a dirt track, we've been on an 8th mile, we've been on just about everything you could think about, and I think that's what keeps the event not only interesting, but it really evens the playing field. You have guys out there with McLarens, and then you might have somebody else out there with a worked Honda S2000 or a Civic, and it's up for grabs. There is that's why I think the event is just such an amazing event, because you just don't know who the winner is. And then there are the laws of attrition, right? We have cars that are always going to break. Like whenever I see something tuned, like highly tuned, you go, I don't know if he's going to make it. Or like, you pretty much know, like if you ever see a tuned like Evo or an STI, they're not making it, right? They're going to blow up.
Brock talked about the car and driver tuner tests, where they have this phalanx of techs every time the car would come in, to tune and beat it, make sure they're running so they can make one more lap. And you can't do that in one lap. You show up, it's got to make it a week long. I mean, you can repair it as necessary, but if you're spending too much time diddling with shit, it ain't going to play.
Right. Well, and I think we've done, there was, like I said, who's the gentleman? I Beecham. They did it in the Ariel Atom. They've done that a few times in an Ariel Atom. So, and I remember driving through, and I want to say we were in Colorado. We were like in a normal car. I think we were driving a BMW at one point, and these guys in the pouring rain and the hail are driving a tube chassis Ariel Atom through the elements, towing a trailer. And the only thing I could do was look at them and go, masochist? Like I just couldn't. I wasn't sure of how to describe that.
I harken back to when I lived in Redondo Beach, owned a Myers Mann dune buggy, and I'm driving home in the middle of the night, rainstorm without a cop, and a policeman passes me as I'm wiping the inside of the windshield, the windshield wiper going, and he's laughing his ass off. That's all you can. I mean, they chose that car.
Right. So what do you think? Like, what would be a perfect one lap car in your mind? Right, to bring, that's reliable, that's a good car to use, that's,
Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to win an event, I mean, there's lovely Porsches and McLaren and GTRs, of course. If you're just trying to have fun, it's whatever you got in the garage.
Right.
This is not an event that's dependent on which car you bring, that you bring a car. I was talking to somebody yesterday, driving on a racetrack, and the most fun I had on a track in a Subaru wagon. I have a WRX wagon with all-season shitty tires on it in traffic. Had no brakes. I couldn't go. I couldn't turn, but it didn't matter. I was having fun.
Right.
So I just pitched in there and go with it. And I think it's one of the things that's lost on enthusiasm. Now, you have to have a Mustang. You have to have something fast, whereas you're not really in touch with the car and you're driving skills. So I'm of the opinion that it doesn't matter.
Okay. So the last one lap there were a couple of Teslas that actually ran the event, right?
Yep.
Were those the first EVs that had ever joined the event?
Actually, last year was 2019 was the first time we ever had one finish and two finish. I think that was the first time that one actually officially entered and ran the entire event.
Okay. So with that being said, right, we look at kind of auto events in general, and we look at racing in general and everything else, and the EVs are coming on. Is there, from an enthusiast standpoint, is there that place for them? Because every time I've seen like a Formula E event, it's the noise, it's the bravado that the cars provide that is totally lost on me. And so I look at this and I just feel like I'm watching golf carts go around the track, even though they're really fast cars. How do you see that kind of playing out in the future of one lap?
I think back to 1896 when the first two cars met on the highway and somebody said, "Go." We'll be still racing right up until there's nothing to race. In the old days, you go a race, you wouldn't be able to hear for 2 weeks. Now you go to a NASCAR race, it's like everybody has mufflers.
Right.
There's been cars are quieter, more efficient, or faster, certainly. Um, and electric cars are just as much fun to drive as, other than the fact that they make no noise and they have no shifting.
Okay. So just as much fun to drive, obviously a hell of a lot more complicated from a technological standpoint. Just me. Well, one moving part, but I mean, as enthusiasts, a lot of us like to tinker and whatnot. These are literally plug and play, right? Which is a great thing. So when these guys are racing and everything, do you feel like it's going to just keep progressing and progressing and progressing, and there's going to be a time when one lap is going to be, say, 80% EVs, and
To live long. There's an inevitability to the evolution of automobile. We're cusp and perhaps past the time where we really have to do something about global warming. And electric vehicles are not the complete answer without a solar or a renewable infrastructure. Once that's in place, then we might be able to make some effect on what we're seeing. Up to that point, gasoline is the most efficient way to move around energy, and we're going to see that for quite a while. And it's not going to be 20 years. It's going to be over 20 years before there's a significant portion of electric vehicles on the road. I mean, more than 10%.
Right. Okay.
Based on the way the attrition works.
Right.
If you wanted self-driving cars, it's the same thing. First of all, you have to develop the technology. Then if you have to start moving it into the marketplace. If you sell 15 million cars a year, you have 330 million cars in the country. It's a long time to move it around.
Right.
Brock, I got this thesis that now that we're talking about this, and I wanted to run by you because it comes up here at Hemming a lot, and we get out in the garages and we talk to our friends and stuff, and it's sort of the elephant in the room to some degree. But when we're talking about electric vehicles or just alternative vehicles, alternative power vehicles,
Sure.
My thesis is that when gasoline becomes an exotic fuel, there is a large group of us that will still pay, I don't know, what's this gas cost these days? $9 a gallon?
Whatever it costs.
Yeah. We're going to pay whatever it costs because that guttural, sort of sensibility, that sound of the noise, and that very tactile experience of an old car. And that, we know that window of old cars keeps moving, right? But we think that that's going to be valuable. Do you agree with that, or do you think that this, once stuff is done, is?
Oh, I certainly agree with that. I have no problem with that. There will always be a place for a niche for gasoline powered automobiles. But at the same time, you don't drive a flathead anymore.
Well,
and we're going to.
Well, actually, he does.
That's right.
Well,
you couldn't get your sound to work. That all makes
sense.
No.
Yeah.
The technology will move on, and there will always be a place in somebody's garage, and there will always be stuff available. And I think that's an important part of the sport. I think it's also wrong to ignore the fact that we're going to race whatever we get our hands on.
Yeah.
You grew up and you're younger than I am. You probably raced your Honda with, or whatever your mother had. You raced it with friends. When I was young, everybody had muscle cars. I had a Fovia coupe. Still raced. And kids now are still doing stupid stuff. And and they're gonna and every succeeding age is gonna have it and enjoy it and have a certain nostalgia for the time that they grew up.
It seems because like at some point, and I'm just old enough to remember like the kerosene pumps behind the gas station, right? At some point, if gasoline becomes that kerosene pump behind the recharging station, all for it, right? There's going to be a bunch of us who are still going to get out there or have to put gasoline in cans and bring it back to the house. Still do it, right? And
of course.
And the aftermarket will probably still support that, I would imagine.
Sure.
Oh, of course, it's not going. It's too much. There's too many of them out there for just to go away.
Right.
At the same time, if you in your electric vehicle to go down and buy replacement Holley double pumper, and drive back.
True. Right. That's probably going to happen.
It's probably going to happen.
Right. So
right.
Going along that vein, Brock. So, all right, we know that the vehicles are changing moving forward. But what about the drivers? Because with all the technology, because and I know, see, and as a driving instructor, this is a big one, right? Because, we have lane change assist, we have, drive. I'm never going to say autonomy because we don't have autonomous vehicles yet, regardless of how many people think we do. How is that impacting, in your opinion, the roads and the racetrack per se? Because I remember once you said we are teaching a generation of drivers to steer and not drive.
And badly at that. We have abandoned any kind of significant teaching and responsibility for the piloting of an automobile. We made it extraordinarily easy to get a license. We made it almost dump-proof to own one and almost fail-safe to get insurance. So,
yeah.
Autonomous cars, I am absolutely convinced that we are not going to live long enough to see any significant impact in the marketplace. Just for a variety of reasons. One is just so infinitely complicated. The amount of information that you have to digest just back out of your driveway is extraordinary. Not only what's going on, but the value judgments and the probabilities and the terrain. And that's bright and sunny. And I've told by leading people in the industry that it's right on the corner. Again, you go back to 15 million cars a year. We're just not going to impact the marketplace, even if it happens tomorrow. But first of all, they have to sort the liability. So in the interim, it's up to us to actually continue to pilot our cars, and we're doing such a shitty job of it that we're still killing 40,000 people a year. So I don't have an answer to that, except that we really need to do something. We have the safest cars, the safest tires, and the safest roads ever, and the most distracted driving population. And the least skilled. I mean, the course we teach is incredibly stupid, but it's incredibly effective because it's all that stuff you're supposed to know when you got your license all those years ago.
So go into that a little. What is the course? To talk about that, and what the purpose of it is.
Driving Dynamics is a company that's been around since the 90s. It started off teaching dealers about how to drive Mercedes on a racetrack for the corporate. And it's evolved into a mostly fleet drivers around the country, your large pharmaceutical companies, chemical companies, tree service people. And in 6 hours, we go over basically what your eyes are supposed to do and what options you have. You're always looking to where you want to go. Your hands follow your eyes. If you look in the place, everything works. If you look at what you're fearful of, target fixation takes over. You own the tree.
Right.
The other end of it is most people have never hit the ABS without or on purpose, and certainly almost nobody has ever hit the ABS and learned that you can actually steer the car. And if you look, steer, and brake, the car will do stupidly wonderful things. Most people have seen too many movies. They think, oh, the car's going to roll over and burst into flames.
I keep trying. I don't know.
Yeah. And we go through some other vehicle dynamic things that are basically about your eyes. And
right.
And any great driver will tell you it really is all about your eyes.
So from a teaching perspective, right, when we look at the new generation of drivers coming in, do you think that falls upon parents? Do you think that falls upon dealers? Do you think that falls upon manufacturers? And how much accountability do we put on the drivers themselves to actually learn how to drive a vehicle? Or does that fall on municipalities to say our test is going to be this much harder? Because if you go to Germany, you take a driver's test, that's a test. You really need to know what the hell you're doing, and it's not just go in, parallel park, do a figure eight, and merge onto the highway in the right lane going 30 miles an hour.
Right. I think it's got to be a combination of all three or all five of your examples. It'd be great if we could actually mandate a minimum and a testing for it. It could be fabulous if we could actually teach the parents enough that they could teach their new drivers. But it's so systemic and so pervasive through the entire system that really nobody knows how to drive.
Right.
I mean, it get down to it. I mean, that ad where 80% of the people think they're a average driver, which is shit. I mean, I a lady once that told me she took a 10 of driving skill, and I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, I'm a 6 because I know what 10 is, and I'm nowhere near that good. You know, I've studied it my entire life. Think I'm pretty good at it, but I ain't that good, and I know you ain't either."
I'm really curious, Brock. What was her answer to that? What was the
Yeah.
action?
Well, she didn't really need to answer. She was quiet about it, and then she got behind the wheel and showed me that she was less than a 1.
Oh wow.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
again, we all have this inflated idea about how good a driver we are.
Right.
People say, who's a better driver, men or women? And I say, well, women are taught to think that men are better drivers, and of course think they're better drivers, but in reality, everybody sucks.
Yeah,
That's true.
I think it's fair to say that my wife actually, keeps me in line and tells me how bad of a driver I am as she's knitting in the front passenger seat. That's how we roll.
My wife complains vigorously about my driving, even though she was my blind date in the Silver State at 140 miles an hour.
Really?
Yeah. And but at the same time, when she gets behind the wheel, she drives exactly like I do. But of course, it's a different perspective.
Mm.
So, what do you think? Moving forward, and we talk about the cars that are coming out right now. Do you have any issue with the power that's in the cars? I mean, the fact of the matter is, you can go out right now and you could buy something with 1,000 horsepower, and that is becoming more and more commonplace. Which is honestly, as a horsepower junkie, is frightening to me. So, for cars like that, or any of the supercars, do you feel like there should be some kind of you must get a license, like a real certification to drive these things before you could go in and buy 1,000 horsepower automobile?
The good thing is that virtually none of those cars ever reach anywhere near their potential on the highway.
Right.
Going to a Ferrari club meeting, they're all talking about how fast their cars. They get on the racetrack, puddle around because they don't want to get any scratches on it.
Mm-hmm.
We all hear cars, and I live on an old country highway that I got a couple of Mustangs go by that shake the house, and that's really all they do. I don't think it's as big a problem as it could be. It's not like the really fast turbo motorcycles of the 80s where ride or die was measured minutes or miles.
Yeah.
There's a certain comfort level that evaporates pretty quickly in a car like that to an unskilled person. Yes, they're going to get in trouble. Yes, they're going to hurt themselves. Yes, they're going to crash the cars and make it more valuable as time goes on. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't see where you limit the horsepower. I mean, there's plans afoot, I guess, to put people are thinking about putting governors on cars, so they only go 85 miles an hour. I guess Volvos, I think, 112 mile an hour governor.
Yeah.
And other cars, Ford, I believe, have governors based on the load ratings of the tires, speed rating of the tires.
I mean, hell, people are driving 100 miles an hour on the 5 going from San Francisco to LA.
In a Prius with the air conditioner on.
With the air conditioner on.
Yeah. That's easy.
20 years ago, I'm driving with my brother across country, and I got on 70 out of 15 in Utah, and make my merge. And when I get in front of the pickup truck towing the trailer down, I'm doing 100.
Jesus.
Yeah.
100 all the way into Vegas with everybody on 100, which is fine. I mean, if everybody's going to speed and everybody's paying attention.
Sure.
There's an interesting. My father died, took it with him, but Caltrans had a study that they did in the early 70s that proved that speed was inversely proportional to accidents, which they of course didn't publish.
Of course.
Because at that point, if the faster you were going, the more you're paying attention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so therefore, yes, when you crashed, you hurt more, but at the same time, you crashed less often because your eyes were where they were supposed to.
Yeah, I'm always amazed getting out and I see it more on the West Coast than I do on the East Coast. But you get out into some of the kind of the desert roads, and it is not uncommon to be cruising at 100 miles an hour, and somebody passes you going well over 100 miles an hour. And it's not it's not some kind of crazy flyby. It's just that's what they're going, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think there are definitely places in the United States that you could run that fast and not worry about it.
I remember being passed by a semi out in West Texas in 1984. We were running 100, and he went by us like we were stopped.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's
West Texas is legal.
Yeah. I know it's insane. I mean, like the more I look at the cars, the more I look at the events and everything else. It's the technology is advancing at such a point that I really hope the drivers start to advance, because there are things that I think we all see on the road nowadays that are quite terrifying. Whether it's somebody playing with their phone or the new cars. I know BMW has some of their cars, they have gesture control, which just absolutely cracks me. Dan, are you familiar with this?
Is this the word like you can feel your side bolster vibrate, or that's just what changing lanes?
Yeah, so gesture control is where they, you can literally put your hand up and like change the radio station by going like this and up the volume by going like that. And Jason Camisa and I were talking about this, and it's like they never consulted an Italian when they were making these cars, because we are always like this and radios are going off and stuff's going off like this. But the biggest issue was that it took me 10 to 15 minutes to try to figure out how to turn it off, right? So this is where I go back to the technology aspect and say, okay, well, why? Who asked for this technology in these? Like, who said, you know what? I'd really like to turn the radio with my finger in the air, as opposed to using a button. Or
technology masturbation. I mean, you do it because you show off. Yeah. And I'm one of the people like you that look a button. Oh, look, let's turn it on. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go through the iDrive. You go through like 85 separate steps to get your traction control off for the racetrack setting.
Yeah.
Most cars, you go click and it's off, and you're done.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you have to have that technology in the car.
I totally agree. And I think, in this group, I think the three of us are all very much into still like as analog as we can possibly get, right? Like if, I measure a car where if I could close my eyes and reach out and say, air conditioning, radio, blinkers, wipers, whatever the case is, I'm good with that. Like, like I don't need all this superfluous garbage in the car, right? If you have power windows and air conditioning, I'm like, that's as modern as I need to be.
Did you say windshield wiper? I don't know.
Wiper, yeah, I know.
Anything about that?
I use rain. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, in California, it doesn't matter there either.
We've got beautiful little chrome studs that go over the stubs. We took the windshield wipers off, and we have little stubs there, which is really pretty.
You need them. You need them once every 4 years.
Right. So, Brock, we know that in 2020, obviously, the pandemic destroyed everything. One lap didn't happen. Every event across the United States was basically canceled. What's up for One Lap 2021 as you're seeing it so far?
Well, I'm not holding out a whole lot of optimism based on what I'm seeing in the country. Wear your freaking mask. I mean, it's not hard. Where to share it. But I am pressing ahead with a one lap for next year, the same we would have taken this year. Mm-hmm. If necessary, I will institute very significant rules and protocols to make everybody safe. Hopefully, we can open it up a little bit, for drivers' meetings and banquets and things like that. But I'm operating under the pretense that we'll probably be under some sort of COVID protocol for quite a while. And it's not good. Hopefully, we will all survive winter time, get through it. But God, I mean, just we've shown the world just how stupid we can be, and we're better at it.
Yeah,
that's a real true. That's a very true statement.
Well, we strive to be good one thing, right? You know?
We are.
Just got that one thing. Good at it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it to excess.
That's right.
Exactly. Well, Brock, let me ask you this, because we're kind of winding down at this point. Where can people find out about not only the driving school that you're at, but One Lap in general? How do they follow you on social? Because I know you're a massive social media guy. You know. So where can everybody find you at?
Also want to know what Country Highway is. That's what we also want to know.
I'm getting really good at this building with my scores. But, One Lap of America, or the Tire Rack One Lap of America. Go to onelapofamerica.com or Facebook, Tire Rack One Lap of America. The company I work for, drivingdynamics.com, primarily for the fleet managers and safety people, but it's a fabulous course. I'd also like to kick in for streetsurvival.org.
Mm-hmm.
I teach for them also. It's the equivalent kids program by enthusiast volunteers, and it's a very, very good program. And other than that, I mean, I'm on social media. Like I said, I have 700 followers on Instagram. I've never made a post.
Nice. That's actually very impressive.
But
The man,
true.
Hey,
that's fantastic.
Hey, Brock, to that 701.
Yeah,
Right.
Thank you.
Right
Yeah, I'll never bother your.
That's outstanding. Brock, thank you so much for joining us on the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue podcast, man.
Appreciate it so much.
Of course.
And if you ever got any more space, I'll fill it.
Oh, you know we will, man. You know, I can't wait to have you back on. Thanks, Brock.
All right.
See you, Brock.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button. And we'll come to you every week.